Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Don Finn. I am the president of the board of directors here at the Coalition of Adult Basic Education, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar about Adult Education Family Literacy Week. We so appreciate your participation in Adult Education and Family Literacy Week, because collectively our voices are going to mean so much more to those who are making the decisions as it relates to the field. So I thank you for your time, your participation, and I'm really excited for today's session. We have a number of leaders from different areas and related areas to the field of adult education who have a lot of exciting information and initiatives to share with us. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Sharon Bonney. Sharon is the COABE Chief Executive Officer. Sharon began her career with COABE as a part-time administrator in 2009, and she really showed her commitment to adult education through her time with the organization. She actually helped to advance the organization in many, many areas, particularly and most notably, or among the notability, moving the organization from a 1,300 member group to currently today 28,000 members nationwide. She also worked with the board of directors on a number of initiatives, including reconstructing the COABE National Conference model, working on state and national workforce partnerships with more than 100 organizations, and helping to rebrand the COABE Research Journal into more of a research to practice journal. She also helped with the COABE's professional development offerings, including the 2020 National Virtual Conference and webinars that have engaged more than 25,000 members regularly. She also worked with COABE leadership and with the National Association for State Directors of Adult Education in forming the six-time award-winning Educate and Elevate public awareness campaign. This campaign has done so much to bring awareness to those decision makers, both at the national, state, and local levels, to really enhance the visibility and the need and value of adult education. More than 128,000 contacts have been made since Educate and Elevate began just a little over 3 years ago. And I'll tell you that these efforts have done their part in staving off literally hundreds of millions of dollars in proposed cuts to adult education, and actually has led to millions of dollars in increased funding for adult education. She also has been the leader of the Adult Education Family Literacy Week activities on behalf of COABE. So it is my pleasure now to hand this session off to our COABE CEO, Sharon Bonney.
Sharon, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Don Finn, Dr. Don Finn. I appreciate that warm welcome. And welcome, everybody. During this time when so many of our programs across the nation are dealing with the fallout and the impact of COVID-19, we felt a panel discussion with leaders in the education and workforce space, as well as government and philanthropic space, would be really timely. I selected today's speakers because I have personally had the pleasure of working with them, and I have seen the thought and the heart that they put into developing creative and comprehensive solutions to many of the biggest problems facing our nation. So I'd like to take a moment to introduce each one of them to you before we begin our discussion. So I'm going to start off by reading their biographies because I want to make sure that I do them justice. Cheryl Oldham is Vice President of Education Policy at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and is also Senior Vice President of the Education and Workforce Program of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Through events, publications, and policy initiatives, and drawing upon the Chamber's extensive network of members, the Education and Workforce Program connects the best minds in American business with the most innovative thinkers in education and training, helping them work together to preserve the strength of America's greatest economic work resource, which is its workforce. Cheryl has 20 years of experience in public policy development and implementation, as well as in project management and government relations. Her previous experience includes serving for 8 years in President George W. Bush's administration. In July 2008, the President designated Oldham as Acting Assistant Secretary for Post-Secondary Education, while also serving as Chief of Staff under Secretary of Education. As Chief of Staff, Olden was the Senior Advisor on Policy and Strategy and oversaw the coordination of the program and policies for which the office was responsible. These included vocational and adult education, post-secondary education, and federal student aid. Thank you, Cheryl, for being part of this panel discussion. British Robinson. British Robinson has more than 20 years of experience leading initiatives in international and domestic health, corporate social responsibility, public-private partnerships, government relations, and advocacy and policy development. She currently serves as the President and Chief Executive Officer for the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy. British oversees the strategic direction and operations of the public chairs, which was established by former First Lady Barbara Bush in 1989. Prior to joining the Barbara Bush Foundation, British was founding CEO of the Women's Heart Alliance and also served as Vice President of Global Strategy and Programs at Susan G. Komen. British also served as the U.S. Department of State on the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, where she was responsible for the U.S. government's successful establishment of public-private partnerships at the international, national, and enterprise levels to strengthen HIV/AIDS initiatives. British, thank you so much for joining us today. And I realize that I actually need to advance my slides, so I'm going to do that right now. This is the first slide. Now I go to Alex. Alex Morrison is Senior Vice President, Business Development, works closely with affiliate companies of Strata Education Network, helping to support revenue growth and strategic partnerships through strategy and execution advisement, as well as direct relationship building. An expert in an education technology market, Alex has built and managed sales and marketing strategies and teams for a broad range of companies. Prior to joining Strata, Alex ran his own market reach strategy and business development consulting firm, Lynn Street Partners, which supported a variety of education companies in the US and internationally. Alex's formative education marketing experience comes from a variety of roles he held at Discovery Channel and Discovery Education Unit over 13 years. He served as Vice President, Business Partnerships, where he led the development and management of business-to-business relationships in US and Canadian markets. Thank you, Alex, for joining us. Appreciate that. Alicia Brandon. Alicia is a corporate social responsibility leader at IBM and has expertise in marketing, sales, government relation, education reform, disaster response, and corporate employee engagement. In her current role, Alicia serves as the public face of IBM to advance corporate thought leadership by strengthening IBM's community outreach, government relations, and media relations, and the public perception of the IBM brand. Alicia has a strong passion for social justice, women's rights, equity in education, and diversity and inclusion. She sits on the board of directors for the Georgia Youth Science and Technology Centers and is currently a member of the Community Initiatives Committee and a former chair of the membership committee for the Atlanta Black Network of Employees at IBM. She also mentors and coaches young girls who aspire to teach in STEM careers. Thank you, Alicia, for joining us. And last but not least, Amanda Winters. Amanda serves as program director in the National Governors Association Solutions, where she serves as an advisor to state leaders on post-secondary and workforce policies. Most recently, Amanda's work is focused on state post-secondary financing with an emphasis on equity and measurable outcomes. She is also working on projects examining state longitudinal data systems, short-term credentials, work-based learning, occupational licensure, state higher education oversight, and connecting education and work. She's working with colleagues and collaborative partners to expand the post-secondary portfolio and NGA's center in response to the needs of states. So thank you, Amanda, for joining us as well. Yes, appreciate you all. This is a very distinguished panel, and I'm really, really delighted that we'll be able to move forward now with our discussion. So I wanted to say just a few words about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Having sat on their Workforce and Education Board, I have seen firsthand the work that Cheryl and her team have put into developing the talent pipeline management system and the job data exchange. So I really felt this would just be a wonderful initiative for our field to hear about. So I'm going to turn this over to Cheryl to discuss.
Thanks so much, Sharon. I really appreciate being invited to be here today to share a little bit about this work and to be with this great group of panelists. As Sharon said, I'm with the Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber of Commerce Foundation. So the Chamber is the largest association representing the interests of business in this country, 3 million plus, and one of our which includes state and local chambers of commerce all over the country, 1,500 plus. And then there's the foundation, which is the affiliate of the chamber. And that really is where we get to do some of this interesting programmatic work that then helps us to inform the policy and advocacy that we do on the chamber side. And I'm fortunate to hold positions in both of those organizations, and work both to develop these initiatives and then to advocate for policy changes at the federal level to advance them. Go ahead with the next slide, Sharon. I wanted to talk briefly about two initiatives. Actually, Sharon asked that I speak to these, and I want to thank her for being part of some new work that we've done relative to both. But a little bit, just to step back and give you a little bit of background on both of them. About 6 years ago now, and I can't believe it's been 6 years, we were fortunate enough to partner with Strada, actually. I think it might have predated Alex's time there, but I'm so glad to share this stage with him. They were our initial investors and supporters in the development of talent pipeline management. And it really was an effort on our part to think about how do we close the skills gap in a way that addresses some of the shortcomings that we have been experiencing in this country for a long time with how we sort of have addressed this. So how do we create those real career pathways into jobs that are actually available and open? And we really felt like what was missing from the current approach was a very intentional focus on employers. And so not just being demand driven, but as the slide says, employer led. And so we sought out to sort of look at, okay, how are we going to do that? And we looked at supply chain management, a very well-known, set of practices and used by the business community for a variety of things, and thought we could really learn some lessons from supply chain management and apply those to talent. So not to suggest that people are widgets, but there is a set of practices and strategies that, if used, can help you to build your talent pipeline in a very sort of strategic way. And so we started out with a white paper 6 years ago, and we went around the country and met with hundreds and hundreds of people and got feedback. And we released that white paper, and we stood up 7 pilot projects around the country in 7 different states. And then we advanced those pilots, learned a lot from that process, and then created an academy and wrote a curriculum. And now we're on, I think, 4.0 of that curriculum. And we hold academies all over the country in partnership with state and local chambers, business associations, other organizations who are, places where employers convene. And so we hold these academies, we teach these strategies, and I don't want to go into tons of detail around the strategies because we could be here for hours, but there are things like analyzing your talent flow. It's very data driven. So where do you get your best talent within your enterprise as an employer? Analyzing your own data. What are those jobs that, if gone unfilled, you cannot compete? And then once you've identified those jobs, then real specificity around the skills, the competencies, the credential requirements. And all of this requires that employers are working together and working, oftentimes competitors coming together, because they've recognized that they can no longer continue to poach from one another. It's better to build that talent pipeline together. And I think the differentiator here for us, at least what we have found, is that we are saying to employers, you've got to get your house in order first before you go to that partner, your supplier of talent, whether it's a university, a community college, a workforce trainer, a nonprofit organization. You've got to get real clear and real specific about your needs. And what we have found as we've grown this network to 33 plus states across the country and moving into Canada is that when employers are really clear, that is there's value for everyone. It is a win for the worker. It's a win for the provider of talent, the education or workforce provider. Everybody gets real clear about what the need is, and therefore we're able to build those pathways into jobs. And we're not sort of really asking, I think, which is what we have done for years and years, is we're asking the suppliers of the talent to sort of read the minds of employers or rely on some, maybe national report that says, we need 500,000 cybersecurity professionals in this country. Well, that may very well be the case, but we got to get real specific about the needs in individual employers and individual communities all across the country, because the needs are very different. And very specific. So that's a little bit about talent pipeline management. And then JDX, what we found as we were gathering all these employers and really addressing this issue of employer engagement, was the idea that we can get real specific about the skills that we need, but we need to do something about the job postings that we're putting out. We need to do something that is I think everybody sort of universally recognized that job postings are not great. We rely on, you need a bachelor's degree as a sorting mechanism. We don't, I think, have not done a good job of getting real specific in those postings. And often with what happens with technology now, and you all know this, is that I may have a job open, I write a position description, I post it on the web, it's a Word document, and then Sharon wants to apply for that job, and she uploads her Word document resume to the system, and we have an HR vendor that is sort of reviewing those two things and looking for keywords. And if those keywords aren't present, if there's not a match in the exact words that we're each using, based on reading those Word documents, then Sharon gets kicked out and we never see her. And she may be exactly the kind of person we're looking for. And so the job data exchange is this idea that we need to be able to send clearer signals from the employer side. And that means creating a job data standard. And so taking all of that sort of Word document language and rendering it as data, and so that it is easily sort of compared with the user who's trying to then apply for the job. So those are sort of the overarching two initiatives. What we have done recently is really dig into what do we need to do, what changes do we need to make, or what resources do we need to develop that enhance both of these projects to get real to support more opportunity populations. And our definition of opportunity populations would be those who have barriers to employment. And Sharon was kind enough to sit on an advisory group that really helped us to develop a resource for talent pipeline management, and a new report that's coming out tomorrow related to data and technology uses and these types of initiatives like JDX that can enhance the experience for adult workers and other individuals that have barriers to employment. Is there another slide, Sharon? I've already walked through both of them. I apologize. I was talking and not even going through the slides, but I've already spoken to both of those. I'll pause now. I'm excited and I'm open for questions when the time comes, and we can dig in more. Thanks, Sharon.
Great, thank you. And I just wanted to say, I was so excited to sit on that committee because I could see how it would really help our adult learners. That's the long game, right? Is that at the end of the day, these employers will be able to work with adult ed programs and be able to hire our adult learners on. So
yeah, I think that's the key to that sort of the resources. And the resource is not just about the employer community. It is then about those nonprofit organizations and others, and a resource for both of those sides about how do they come together to meet the needs of those populations of workers. So we're really excited about the opportunity there.
And it was really, I liked your point about how competitors came together to work together. because I saw that sitting at, the folks that were sitting at the table who really can help move the needle, and they needed to come together in order to do so. So great job on this. I'm very excited to see the report tomorrow.
Thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. Okay, now I'm delighted to turn this over to British Robinson of the Barbara Bush Foundation. And I asked British to speak because having sat on their National Advisory Panel, I've seen firsthand the thought and energy they put into specifically working with data sets, as well as helping the field sort of rebrand themselves. So British, I'm going to turn this over to you, and thank you for being a part of this panel discussion.
Thanks, Sharon, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for bringing us all together, Sharon. And just want to say I appreciate the other panelists from U.S. Chamber for talking about some real-world solutions to the problem that I'll speak to in a minute, and perhaps maybe even to take a moment to take a step back. I'd like to just take a second to ground the conversation, in particular around key statistics around literacy in America today. The first thing is we have some new data from in the field of literacy from what we would call normative body if we were in health, and that's from PIAC. Currently today, there are 130 million Americans, approximately 54% of all adults between the ages of 16 and 74 lack proficiency in literacy, essentially reading below what we would call the equivalent of 6th grade level. There are many people on this webinar today that are experts in the field, but there are other people that aren't experts. So I just wanted to sort of give a little bit of a state of the state. Adults who lack proficiency in literacy are defined as those who score level 2 or below on PIAC, which is the Program for International Assessment of Adult Competencies, again, considered our normative body. They have all the good data that we need to do our work. Say that grade level equivalents are simply estimates. They're simply estimates because we are talking about adults. PIAC proficiency levels do not specifically correspond to grades K through 12, but for the sake of conversation and basic understanding, I wanted to clarify that for all of our listeners and participants. So again, 130 million Americans, or 54% of adults, lack proficiency in literacy, essentially reading below equivalent to a 6th grade level. That is a problem, or what we like to say a crisis. Before I talk a little bit more about the crises and other solutions, I just want to say again, thank you and kudos to all of the panelists, as we are so pleased to read about and to hear a little bit more about today, the innovative solutions that you're all working on, or what I like to call the how. How are you all working together to address this country's literacy crises, as I just spoke about? Well, you all have been working on the how. Our team at the Barbara Bush Foundation has also been focused on the why. The why, not just educators and experts in the field of literacy, but everyone in the US should care about literacy today. Much of our recent work really is about this moment. And I like to say the moment is, how can we move not only the field of literacy, but all of our stakeholders, partners, friends, corporate sector, foundation sector, philanthropic sector, to really move from what I call a sympathy conversation to an equity conversation. And the person that really states it best in real terms today, I think, is the president of the Ford Foundation, Darren Walker. Darren says, as I see it, there's a spectrum of giving that goes from generosity to justice. And while all actions we take along the path can benefit people, the closer we move towards justice, the more likely we are to benefit society as a whole and for the long term. I think exactly to the projects and work that our previous panelist was discussing. To this end, we at the foundation are focused on building the collective knowledge base by documenting literacy's impact on every aspect of society. In short, we're trying to make the case to actually bring data and evidence to light that can power all the solutions that have been talked about today and will be talked about later. Again, our desire is to power those solutions that you all are creating. We can't power those solutions without data and without information. I come from a deep health background, as Sharon shared a little bit earlier, if this were a health issue, we would consider it an epidemic, truly an epidemic. It is what I also called a silent and enduring crisis that we can solve. It is a solvable problem. And in order to do this, if we solve this problem, we'll break the multi-generational cycles of poverty, food insecurity, insecure housing, etc. So the field has been, to speak on behalf of the field, really historically underfunded, under-researched, and woefully ignored, even though it is a solvable problem. So what I want to do today is just take a couple of minutes to share a little bit about the 3 whys, the knowledge base that we're seeking to create to, again, power and lead to those solutions that we're asking everybody to join, to help with, and to join the fight. So the first thing that we did, is the first slide that Sharon has up, is to put a face on the problem. You can't understand it if you can't see it, and you literally can't see it. So we created a literacy map. In health, we would call a heat map. Oftentimes, if you hear about the work of CDC, you'll hear them say, here's a heat map. Here's where the flu is across the United States. Well, essentially, that's our equivalent. This map represents adult literacy rates alongside key quality life indicators such as health, income, and education in every county in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. We've also updated this map with local, state, and city data that's available, again, with the ultimate goal to influence and provide that power, that data for local decision makers. We also hope that this tool will, again, power not only the local level, the state level, and the national level. The second thing we've been engaged in over the last 18 months or so is to truly say, how do those numbers actually equate to true dollars and cents? And to that end, about 6 months ago, we commissioned a study by Gallup, which Sharon had up a few minutes ago, the first of its kind economic study, released earlier this month in Forbes magazine, and also we did a webinar with Governor Jeb Bush to really put those dollars and cents behind the problem. Our principal economist, Dr. Jonathan Rothwell, analyzed the economic implications due to literacy rates in the country. We could be losing up to $2.2 trillion in in the economy with GDP. In fact, Dr. Rothwell believes this is a conservative estimate. We could be losing more than the $2.2 trillion. Part of his key findings clearly showed that if we could move adults up to that approximate 6th grade level, that we would generate an additional 10% into GDP and annual income. What I think most people on this webinar know, but not everyone is aware, is that income is strongly correlated to literacy. For example, his results found that the average annual income of adults who read at the equivalent of 6th grade level is approximately $63,000. This is significantly higher than adults who might be at a 3rd to a 5th grade level, earning approximately $48,000. And much higher, almost half of those at the lowest levels of literacy who earn approximately $34,000 on average. So the economic gains would be quite high if we're to solve this problem. And in fact, we know that if cities and locales and many of our major metropolitan statistical areas, if they solve this problem, take it on and really prioritize, that they could be bringing up their GDP, again, 10% or even above in some places. The third sort of action that we took to help, again, power the problem so that we can get to more solutions is a national action plan. So what are we going to do about it? We've just told you about the problem. We've put dollars and cents around it. We've given you the number or the clear data around those brothers and sisters in our society that we need to fully support going forward so that we can solve this problem together at every level of society. We have to have a roadmap. We have to come together to give some sort of guidance and direction to everyone, every sector in society who can help. To this end, last fall, we convened the best and brightest minds in the country, experts in the field of literacy and education and beyond. They have now come together as a national group, a consortium, if you will, and we've convened them across 5 key areas: reach and access, data, professional development, criminal justice, and research. Those priority areas are the areas we decided to focus on so that we can help solve the problem but also to provide concrete action, concrete recommendations to corporations, foundations, philanthropists, and individuals so that everyone can take part in what we call these solutions. So we want to engage more people in solving the problem, finding those concrete recommendations. What can you do to help? And specifically, if others are interested in helping, we're going to be convening some stakeholder listening sessions over the next probably 3 to 6 months by sector. You'll hear more about that from us, or you can contact Sharon and she'll put you in touch with us. But we think this is highly relevant to policy makers and decision makers at every level. In particular, our mayors and governors who are going to be facing real decisions, hard decisions, given the budget cuts at state and local levels. And we want them, when they're forced with making those decisions, we want them to decide, to understand, to have the data, to have the power under those decisions to be able to prioritize literacy. We say literacy is truly the key. It is the key. It's the through line to all of our social, many and most of our social problems. Again, as I said earlier, whether we're connecting it to housing or food security or educational attainment. And we think once and for all, we want to solve this problem, but you need the data to do it. In closing, we're absolutely inspired by the work you're all doing on the how, but we need more people to be engaged in the how so that we have a more literate America. And we hope that our contributions to the collective evidence base, to making the case, to the ROI, will help engage more people in committing to solving this problem. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, British. My goodness. First, I just want to say, we at COABE truly appreciate you bringing all the stakeholders together as you did in the fall, all the work that you've been doing behind the scenes as well with all these different committees. And then also this sort of work, really trying to put a face to the problem and helping the general public to understand just how bad it is and how under-resourced and underfunded we are. So thank you very much, British. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're muted again, Sharon, but I'll get started. It's okay.
Hold on one second. I just want to say, I do want to say what I was trying to say earlier. I apologize for that. I was trying to keep myself muted so you couldn't hear what was going on outside. I do want to first say, British, thank you. Thank you for all the work that the Barbara Bush Foundation has already done, the resources you've put into really trying to bring the field together, into putting together a national action plan, all the committees, the committee work that's been going on behind the scenes. The work that you've done with Gallup, I think, is phenomenal, and I'm really glad that you were able to talk about that today. And I think biggest, in my mind, besides just bringing stakeholders together, is really putting a face to the problem. So I just wanted to thank you for that. I want to commend you for your work. Really appreciate you being a part of this panel discussion today.
Thanks, Sharon.
You're welcome. And now I'd like to turn this over to Alex Morrison. But before I do, I just want to say, I had the pleasure of meeting Alex after presenting a TED-style talk at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Talent Forward Conference. And I'm embarrassed to say I really didn't know much about what Strata Education was up to and the work that they were involved in. So Alex and I have engaged in a number of discussions since that point. And I've just found it super informative and have really felt that this would be something that the field would want to know about. So Alex, I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Don and COABE. For those attending, it's very hard to find a silver lining during a pandemic, and the work supporting adults in learning and education has always been critical, but especially now during the pandemic, and it's still not getting the attention it deserves, but the increased attention is really hard to say positive when we're dealing with this, but it has been something that I think is moving us in the right direction. I often feel out of my league on panels, but especially on this one. So this is a pretty fantastic group. I'm humbled to be included. Strata is a unique organization. We are a self-funded public charity nonprofit that's totally focused on improving lives by improving or catalyzing new pathways between education of all types and a career. A lot of our work is focused with partners like other nonprofits and foundations, post-secondary institutions, workforce and economic development offices, employers, industry orgs, et cetera, to support kind of three major areas, which is improved career or education exploration, to improve the support that learners get while they're going through an educational program to ensure they complete, and then really focused around how do we help them convert that education to a meaningful career. When we talk about our priority populations, Sharon, if you can go to the next slide. At the center are, and I should say these are pre-pandemic numbers. These are 44 million Americans that do not have any form of completed post-secondary credential, and they're in the lowest quartile for income. So that means less than $35,000 as an individual, and less than $70,000 as a household. Clearly, this number is much higher now as a result of the pandemic. Industries have been rocked, but the good news is their new roles have been created. The growing industries need staff to skill up quickly. Traditional credentials are critical, but we're also seeing a movement towards skills-based stackable credentials, and I'll talk a little bit about some of our data work. We also care a great deal about the 10 million low income or lowest half of income of college students, because they have the tendency, the highest tendency to not complete. And we're already seeing that as a result of the pandemic. Lots of traditionally students have fallen in that category. And we also care deeply about the 6 million opportunity youth. And the main reason for that is unless we address these issues, they are quickly going to they're going to turn 25 and get added to that 44 million number. Next slide, Sharon, too. So this is where, and I think Sharon and I spent quite a few calls talking about this. So what does Strata do? So Strata's work is kind of broken out into 6 areas. And I'll speak to these specific to the topic today, but we have these 6 affiliate organizations that are actually part of the Strata network. Workforce readiness skills are critical. Since the pandemic, especially companies like MZ and Kale, which are in our network that work across all of those major segments, we've been working on rapid reemployment, rapid skills training development, really around, okay, what are the skills needed in the market right now via data access? How do we help post-secondary institutions improve the skills they're producing rapidly through program redevelopment? And then how do we, and this is probably the hardest part, and a lot of the work that Kale does, is how do we get employers, workforce orgs, post-secondary institutions, industry groups at a table together to talk about real change on a rapid time frame. We have several research groups, one that focuses on the future of work and the new learning ecosystem, and then another, which I'm going to show you some data that's really consumer driven, and it's this public viewpoint data that we've been releasing every week since the pandemic beset the country. We also do quite a bit of philanthropic work, including some interesting partnerships with orgs like Braven, who focuses on social capital building. Several partnerships, philanthropic partnerships with workforce systems. San Diego is a great example. Commonwealth Corp in Massachusetts is another. And then we do quite a bit of support in the core, but for Strata's mission to some degree of periphery, which is how do we support things like literacy skills, numeracy skills. We have investments in companies like CellEd, which is a mobile first training platform, and does quite a bit around English language learning and literacy skills. I will say another silver lining of this pandemic is that it's forcing everyone from K-12 to adults, both from the consumer side as well as the institution side, to take a leap forward in providing digital literacy training, digital access. This is critically important to the market. The digital divide is real in this country. Providing somebody free 10 megs of internet at home does not work when they're also trying, they have 4 or 5 students at home accessing that same bandwidth. So these are issues that have been around since the 90s, and I've been involved in telecommunications since then, and they're still around. So I'm really hoping that these get addressed through the pandemic. And then everything that we learn, we promote through thought leadership. We have fairly comprehensive national engagement programs, including with the NGA, to support innovative programs and approaches. And so the work is pretty broad, but the working or displaced adults, especially now, are at the center of our mission. So Sharon, if you go to the next slide, I'm going to talk a little bit about, and some of this data is brand new, and I'll say to anyone listening in, if you just Google search Strata Education Network Public Viewpoint, you'll get a direct link to this site. We update the data every week. You can reach out to staff at Strata. They'll actually talk to you about if you wanted the raw data for use. But this is some of the latest data. So interesting on this slide, adults without college degrees, we're seeing an interest in enrolling in post-secondary since COVID-19. In fact, especially so with disrupted workers, which is obvious, right? 20% point net increase in the number of adults interested in pursuing post-secondary. Obviously, they've lost jobs, shifts, hours of work, and they're looking to education to strengthen. The crazy thing here is that they're also less confident about the ROI on that education. You know, there's some serious barriers to enrollment that we have to address. They don't know how to necessarily connect their education to a meaningful career that will provide the income they need. And this is a real duality that we see kind of in the market. It's something that has to be addressed. If you go to the next slide, Sharon, you know, we're starting to see an increase. Over the last few years, we've seen an increase in this shift to non-degree pathways. That's been amplified during the pandemic. You know, more than 2/3 of our aspiring adult learners, frankly, have had a negative experience the last time they were a student, including a majority of them who are referring to a post-secondary experience. You know, simply put, we need to do better here. We see institutions and organizations moving forward with innovative programs and stackable credentials, and we think that's an amazing start. And so Strata really looks to figure out ways to support programs like that, because we believe that that is going to be a big part of coming out of this spiral. And then Sharon, if you go to the last slide, this is another one that we just found interesting. In addition to kind of standard goals of employment, right? You know, finding a job in a career that they love, having enough to eat, pay mortgage. Typically, finding a career and job that they love is not in the top 7, right? Because we have basic needs. Just over time, we have seen that increase, which defies a bit of common sense, but I think folks are looking at this as an opportunity to reset. And it's critically important that we support any learner of any age who has an interest in doing that, because we are entering, and I'm sure you guys have heard this from many others, where you know, the lifelong learning is not just kind of an interest, it's a necessity. From literacy and numeracy all the way through up until you're a retiree and upskilling. Education needs to be kind of a basic right that not only we have, but is expected, and that's critically important to the work that we do here at Strata. I mentioned a lot of this data. There's a ton more data. You can pull it by demographic. It's all completely free. You can find it on the Strata Education website. So Sharon, thanks again. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this.
Excellent, Alex. And, you know, from the discussions we've had, I've just been so impressed. I mean, they have so much data. They're constantly putting it out. If you haven't attended their webinars, they're excellent. So I think you can go to their website and find out some more details there. But Alex, thank you for making time to be on this panel. We really appreciate you sharing this. And now I'd like to shift to SkillsBuild. I had the pleasure of meeting with Alicia a few months back, and just amazed at the IBM SkillsBuild platform. When we were introduced, I remember kind of the project at hand was having our leadership go through, check out the SkillsBuild platform and see if there's a way to customize it for adult education. So understanding a lot of our adult learners are not reading at that 12th grade reading level, right? but they need to be able to get the credentials, and they would love to have IBM kind of behind them. So as we talked, we came up with a pilot project that I'm going to share about in a moment here, but I'd like to turn this over to Alicia Brandon, who's going to talk about the SkillsBuild platform. Alicia?
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in a panel with such an amazing group of professionals. Next slide, please. So what is SkillsBuild? At its core, SkillsBuild aims to connect adult learners, job seekers, and career development opportunities in partnership with selected nonprofits and NGOs across the world. SkillsBuild is an offering from IBM Corporate Social Responsibility, which is the side of IBM that is focused and invested on social good, and also the part of the company I work for. SkillsBuild is completely free for both our partners and the learners that they serve. To date, we have partnered with nonprofits and NGOs across the world that serve young adults without traditional degrees, as well as refugees and migrants, military veterans, career changers, the long-term unemployed, and adult learners per our latest partnership, as Sharon talked about, with COABE. We are very happy to have COABE on board to pilot the SkillsBuild platform for the adult educators as well as the adult learners that you serve. Although SkillsBuild is free, we have invested and continue to invest a lot of time and resources into making SkillsBuild an amazing, impactful platform and offering. Next slide, please. We launched SkillsBuild last year, so it's actually a fairly new offering, as a tool for nonprofits and NGOs to use in their own employability and inclusion programs. In this way, SkillsBuild is different from other direct-to-learner publicly available offerings. In order to access SkillsBuild, an individual must be affiliated with one of our nonprofit or NGO partner organizations. We are focused on job role-oriented learning paths like cybersecurity, data analysts, and many others. From day one, our focus has been on helping learners get the knowledge and skills they need to be competitive for an entry-level technology-related job. We offer IBM branded digital badges, which learners can share with potential employers on LinkedIn. Now, these are a little bit different than certificates or certifications or diplomas for that matter, but they are increasingly being considered by employers in hiring decisions. We offer a skills assessment to help learners select a career path of their choice that aligns with their skills, personality, and abilities. We are also creating project-based learning opportunities and also a new community just for learners and partner organizations to come together and share ideas. We continue to tap into our wider IBM community to recruit volunteers who come on as coaches who help the learners with scheduling one-on-one meetings. They can discuss career-related opportunities and topics and even do mock interviews as well. Next slide, please. The SkillsBuild platform offers digital learning content curated for specific job roles and open badges. The opportunity for learners to find coaches, as I mentioned before, to improve and practice their skills, and experiential learning, which allows a job seeker to actually demonstrate the skills that they've learned through the platform. If you wish to learn more, Sharon will put the link in the chat. And also feel free to reach out to me if you have any additional questions. Thank you, Sharon. I'll turn it back over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Alicia. I'm going to put the link right here in the chat box and just mention that those who attended this webinar, there's over 600 that registered. I think we seen 300 or so that are actually on. You guys get the first dibs at this. So what it is we are going to be putting out a pilot initiative where those in the field, there's going to be 5 programs that are selected. They will be able to participate in a pilot and help us to customize this IBM SkillsBuild platform specifically for adult education. So you'll be a part of that groundbreaking work. And then once we have it customized just the way we know that will be really helpful for the field, then we're going to roll it out to our field. And we have a wonderful, and I mean wonderful DSM, a digital success manager. You will love him. He is great to work with, who's really going to help us ensure that the adult learners get on and have the support that they need. So just be on the lookout for that. But I did put in the link right there in the chat box. So if you're interested in applying, there's more information there. So Alicia, thank you so much for making time for this and for sharing about the SkillsBuild platform.
Thank you.
Wonderful. And now I want to turn over to Amanda Winters. So Amanda and I met recently at the Aspen Institute before COVID, right, Amanda? And she did a wonderful presentation there talking about the work of the National Governors Association and the Reskilling and Recovery Network. And she gave me the opportunity to speak to NGA on September 2nd, and that was wonderful to share about the field of adult education, sort of the challenges we face with funding and the challenges that we face in terms of visibility. And she's been a wonderful partner. So Amanda, please share about NGA and the Reskilling and Recovery Network.
Great. I'm so excited to be with all of you today. I truly value and honor the work that you all do every day to serve students and to step in where we too often do not give you enough resources and don't have enough emphasis from the state level. So a little bit about NGA and the work that we're doing currently. So the National Governors Association actually has two sections to it. We have our official association section and then the Center for Best Practices. And that's where I sit. It's really the technical assistance and consultative arm of the National Governors Association. And we're split up into different policy areas. Post-secondary education really connects very closely to workforce, economic development, human services. It's really the ways in which governors approach education as a way to lift people out of poverty. So, so we really try to join forces across these policy areas to have the most comprehensive information and solutions for governors as they consider investments and priorities. So currently in the pandemic environment, everything sort of took a shift, as I know they did for everybody. When we were able to put together a learning network of states who are thinking about impactful recovery strategies and recovery that can be equitable and can move people forward, not just stepping back into the ways in which we've worked in the past, but using this as a catalyst moment to examine our systems for equity and access issues. So we're very excited to be a part of that. We pulled together this Reskilling and Recovery Network that Sharon has been able to bring her expertise to, along with some practitioners from the field of adult basic education, which is very exciting, an extremely well attended event. We have 21 states who are joining with us in this network. And it's really just, they want to learn from each other. They want to talk to each other. They want to figure out what other people are doing. This is an unprecedented time. I know a lot of us are looking back at the Great Recession, which has hopefully some parallels because we're trying to use that as a benchmark for some of the things we're doing. But this is new for all of us. So it sort of puts the state policy conversation on a level playing field. Nobody's way out ahead of each other. We're all just kind of struggling along and hoping that what we're trying and prioritizing is working. So these groups that we're bringing together across the 21 states include folks from the governor's office, and then also from workforce, from community college leadership, and from economic development or industry. So we're trying to think about connecting dots. And I think that's certainly from the governor's office perspective where adult basic ed fits in very well. It's a lot of times we try to connect the dots between K-12, higher ed, and workforce. And we forget the very important connective piece of adult basic education as a pathway into further opportunity. My background is I worked in state higher ed policy in Illinois before I came out to Washington, D.C. area, and was privileged to be a part of conversations attempting to better connect adult basic ed state planning to the priorities around WIOA, around ESSA, around Perkins. But it takes a real strategic cross-sector conversation to think about how this fits into these pathways and credential attainment conversations that governors are engaged in. So we're very excited to be able to, within this project, highlight the important role of the work that all of you are doing and the need to prioritize investment. I know that COABE is giving some kudos out to some governors very soon, one of them being Governor Wolf. Governor Wolf in Pennsylvania is the governor that we know of that is put money towards, from the CARES Act funds, towards adult basic education. And that came out of the Governor's Education Emergency Response Funds, or GEAR funds. There might be some other governors who will jump on board with that and put more money towards adult basic ed. We're excited that Governor Wolf saw the very important priority need to put money towards this during the pandemic. So we're very excited to continue bringing together these 21 states until the end of the year. Again, it's a learning network. It's really just how can we give them the best information. When Sharon brought the information to them, it really spoke to a lot of the key connection points that we're trying to make. Who's the new dislocated worker? It falls heavily in populations that are served by adult basic education. Folks who are heavier impact are those who have lower skill levels and are more in minority populations. And those are the people that we need to serve better in our responses. And we need to utilize every tool that's available to state leaders. And the very powerful tool of a network of all of you, practitioners, the leaders in the states who are serving these populations every day, is one that we are intent on highlighting across the course of this project so that it hopefully becomes a priority and ongoing conversations that NGA leads. If you want to jump forward to the next slide. I just wanted to touch very briefly on a couple of other things that we are doing. I know we're running out of time. We are excited to work with Strata Education Network on efforts to connect adults to work for education pathways, which we often think about the connections of adult basic education and also human services wraparound supports for those students who are being disproportionately impacted, especially during the pandemic, by existing issues, childcare, food insecurity, housing insecurity, connectivity, technology gaps, and access. So we're very excited not only to be able to partner continuously with COABE for the information to fill those gaps, but then also with Strata Education with their investments in order to better serve these students. Also thinking about work-based learning, how that connects down to adult basic education pathways, and moving folks into good paying jobs, apprenticeship pathways, issues cross-cutting of racial diversity and inclusion, which are priorities for the NGA Center for Best Practices, and certainly the work that we are doing. We see, as Alex was mentioning, some silver linings. We see this time as the opportunity to bring those issues front and center and to make sure that whatever strategies we're bringing forward are infused with these conversations, these frank conversations around racial diversity and equity. Also, as I mentioned, around human services and better alignment of systems to support folks who are working through training and education pathways so that they can complete and be successful. And then thinking about all of these systems, these cross systems, priority alignments, leverage points for governors, the great strength that they have in their state with your networks in reaching and serving priority students, adults who have been adversely impacted by the pandemic and exacerbation of existing inequities and policy shifts that can be made to address that. So we're very excited to continue to work with Sharon, also to continue to work with your network and the important and vital work that you do. Thank you again so much. I'm so privileged to be on with all of the attendees and also to be on with all of my co-panelists and learning right along with you about the great work that's going on across these organizations. Sharon, I'll throw it back to you.
Oh my gosh, Amanda, thank you. I mean, I think it was such a fortunate conversation that we had back there at the Aspen Institute when we started kind of talking about how we could work together, because as you all can see, I mean, the governors are such an important piece to this puzzle, right? We need to figure out how can we work together? Like, how can we make sure the governors know about the work that we're doing? And one of the things that, as Amanda said, after that presentation that we did, we received so many responses back where people were saying, we really had no idea. It kind of goes to what British was saying, right? We're kind of this faceless, unnamed issue, adult education. And the return on investment is often not out there. We're not doing a good job of putting that out there. So thank you, Amanda, for inviting us to be a part of that discussion. I also just want to say to Amanda's point, we will be honoring some legislators, and that's going to be on a daily basis. And we would love for you to join us. In fact, today at 1 o'clock, we're honoring Senator Murkowski of Alaska, but we also have will be honoring Governor Wolf of Pennsylvania, and we honored Governor Ducey of Arizona on Monday. And we also have a mayor here, Mayor Sylvester Turner of Houston, Texas. And I have to say, he's the only mayor that I know of that has an adult literacy office specifically attached to the mayor's office. So we really wanted to highlight him and feature him. And then we close it out with Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio on Friday. So every day we have these legislative recognition events that take place, and you can check our schedule of events for information on that. Also want to encourage you all, I put right there in the chat box information on how to contact all your legislators and tag them with one quick click. And you can also send them a quick email as well. Folks, this is raising visibility. We're not necessarily advocating. We're raising visibility about the great work that's being done in the field. So there's a link in there for you so you can take action and contact your legislator and raise visibility about the great work that you're doing. As well, we have all sorts of resources for Adult Education and Family Literacy Week. Graphics, a tweet deck, articles, Twitter storm opportunity, voices from the field that you'll be able to see, eye-popping graphics. We have 10 different ones, so 2 for each day. And really excited about this. We've seen a lot of activity over Twitter with these graphics. So go online and you can just go to www.coe.org and get them there. But really our goal with all of this, with the National Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week, is to help bring the field together, to raise our voices for adult education, to really raise the visibility, because we know that this is what we truly need at this time. We need the governors to allocate the CARES Act stimulus funding, right? We need the feds to give us that $1 billion for federal funding. We need the philanthropists and the foundations to understand the value of our work. And so hopefully bringing all these pieces together over time, and these wonderful panelists who've taken the time to be with us today, hopefully we can start doing a better job of that. So I'm going to take a minute here to launch our poll and ask everybody to take a minute to take this poll. And as we do that, I'm going to give our panelists a minute here, each of them, to close us out and say some final words. So I'm going to start with our first panelist, Cheryl, if you have some words you'd like to say.
Thanks, Sharon. And this was so informative and helpful just to hear everything that all of these wonderful groups are doing. I would just, the only thing I'll say, and I was answering a couple of questions in the question box, is to go to thetalentssupplychain.org. All of our curriculum, resources, case studies, videos about how, every one of these strategies is available publicly. The academies aren't necessarily something that someone can just, sign up to do. But if you're in a community, we can help make connections to those that might already be, those employer organizations or chambers or EDOs that are engaging in this work. We're happy to be a connector there, but thetalentssupplychain.org, and you'll find everything and more than you want.
Fantastic. Thank you, Cheryl. British, do you have some final words you'd like to share?
Thanks, Sharon. Just really briefly, I think the $2.2 trillion that I talked about earlier in our Gallup study, to really put dollars and cents around the need to invest in adult basic education is absolutely critical. And you can go to our website at barbarabush.org to see the updated data, our heat map, as well as the study. So we encourage folks to do that. And then lastly, to all of our mayors and governors, to connect back to our last speaker and yourself, Sharon, is just to say our plea, our ask, our request is that we know that governors and mayors are faced with a real crisis on their hand given the COVID situation. And there's a lot of competing priorities, but we'd ask that they really look hard at the data, the clear evidence around investing in adult basic education, because that will provide dividends to their city and their state. We ask that they really try to prioritize that as they make some really tough choices over the next year or so. So thank you for being here. And I'm actually, speaking of dollars and cents, I have a board meeting. I have my finance committee meeting and I'm 5 minutes late for it. So I apologize to the other panelists that I have to run, but it has been an honor to be on a panel with all of you, and actually I'll be in touch offline. Thank you for all your great work.
Thank you, British. We appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Alex.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'll close how I started, is obviously thanking you and Don and Khalid, but also just all the practitioners that are out there. You are the front line of this. It's critically important to the work. And I know that sometimes it feels like the support isn't there from institutions and organizations, but know that there are an ardent group of cheerleaders like us that recognize how important the work you're doing. Just a reminder, strataeducation.org is the website. You can actually sign up for a newsletter there, and I think as we release new data, you automatically get notified. strataeducation.org/public viewpoint is where that data that I showed is. And if you're interested in learning more about Strata or affiliates or the work that we're doing, or you have something that you think is really innovative that we may not be aware of that we could share, please reach out to me directly. My email's there on the background. But thank you again, Sharon. This has been fantastic.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate your time. Alicia, any final words?
Yeah, absolutely. Just want to echo the other panelists and saying thanks again for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to present about SkillsBuild. I just also want to close, in the next 3 years, nearly 120 million workers in the world's largest economies will need to be retrained and reskilled. So IBM is working to ensure that we're providing the technology and the access so that job seekers, adult learners have the opportunity to do just that. If you want to hear more information on SkillsBuild, we actually took SkillsBuild and built it out a little bit more as a result of COVID. So it's called Reignite SkillsBuild with the effort to help reignite the economy. You can find out more information on that at skillsbuild.org. And everything that IBM is up to in corporate social responsibility can be found at ibm.org. Thank you again.
Wonderful. So I just put that, I've been putting the links in as you all have been saying them. Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate that. And Amanda, if you'd like to close us out.
Yeah, definitely. I answered a couple of questions that came in the Q&A and were in the chat. More than happy to field any outreach around the Reskilling and Recovery Network. If your state is engaged and you'd like to learn more or connect with that team, if you'd like to talk about engagement with some of the upcoming conversations, please reach out to me. I threw my email in the chat, along with the link for the state project, and also some information around the on-demand workforce. So that was a question that came up. We have some resources about that. Please reach out. Certainly one of the goals that I have every time I come to a panel like this is getting to know some of these different networks, letting you see my face, letting you have my contact. Please see me as a supportive and collaborative resource for you. We'll do whatever we can to highlight and elevate the work that you're doing and bring you whatever support or resources that we can. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're excited that NGA is solidifying some of these partnerships so that we can continue to closely work together. Thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you, Amanda. And I have to say, Amanda, you're a powerhouse. It's been wonderful to work with you. Thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you for all the great work that you're doing. And thank you to all of the attendees today. We look forward to seeing you throughout Adult Ed and Family Literacy Week and beyond. Thanks, everybody. Bye now.